I once held a position in an Alabama funeral home, and don't worry, it wasn't as morbid as you might expect. My main responsibilities were centered around office work, ensuring that the environment lacked the eerie and spooky atmosphere often associated with such places. However, by pure happenstance, I found myself entangled in a chilling tale from my time there. The story revolved around a man whose wife and baby daughter had fallen victim to shocking and mysterious circumstances, a narrative that unfolded through the channels of the news rather than within our funeral home. The initiation of the funeral arrangements occurred when a person, presumably a relative of the grieving man, reached out. In the customary fashion, we meticulously recorded the names of the deceased. This information was crucial for crafting and producing the orders of service that would guide the funeral proceedings. Shortly after, a colleague forwarded me a link to a local news article exclaiming, "Holy crap, we're doing the funeral." The piece detailed a horrifying incident where someone had broken into the grieving man's house while he was at work, specifically targeting his wife and child before hastily leaving. What intensified the horror was that the man's business partner had experienced an identical tragedy with his family about 6 months prior. The article hinted at a motive, suggesting that someone sought revenge on the two business partners due to a deal gone awry or similar issues. There was a growing suspicion that the same individual or group might have orchestrated both sets of murders. The modus operandi was eerily consistent, entering silently, eliminating the family with no witnesses, and then meticulously cleaning up to eradicate potential evidence. However, during the second set of murders, the killer made a crucial mistake. A witness spotted the man's face as he fled across a field behind the victim's house, and it seemed like the police were closing in on their prime suspect. The funeral, an emotionally charged event, unfolded as one of the most heart-wrenching experiences in my career. The petite coffin meant for the baby daughter was overwhelmingly poignant, even for someone who had participated in numerous deeply moving services. Despite my belief that I was desensitized to such scenes, the sight of that little coffin evoked a lump in my throat. The husband, grappling with his grief, stood out among mourners. While many people maintain stoicism during funerals, especially in the face of sudden tragedies, this man was shattered. Witnessing his attempts to deliver a eulogy for his wife and child was particularly painful. He struggled to articulate his emotions, and eventually, his brother intervened to guide him away when he succumbed to a complete breakdown. The unanimous sentiment among my colleagues was that this funeral ranked among the most challenging we had ever hosted. However, the saga didn't conclude there. It evolved into one of the most distressing narratives I'd ever encountered, let alone been a part of. A few weeks post-funeral, my coworkers sent me another news link. This one lacked a message, featuring only that unsettling blue and yellow horrified face emoji. Opening the page, I learned that the police had apprehended the individual responsible for murdering our customer's wife and child. To my shock, the perpetrator turned out to be the same guy who had lost his family in nearly identical circumstances just months before. Yes, that guy. The article provided scant details, prompting us to continually check the news for updates. Then, the shocking revelation: the murderer received a reduced charge for cooperating with the police. As part of this cooperation, he exposed the text exchanges between him and his business partner, outlining their sinister plan to orchestrate each other's families' deaths to abscond with their secret lovers, one of whom was a secretary at the company they jointly owned and operated. The most disturbing aspect was how unsuspecting one would be of their capability for such heinous acts. I mean, I guess they weren't inherently evil. That's likely why they conspired to eliminate each other's families instead of carrying out the deeds themselves. Perhaps this realization struck the funeral attendee, explaining his profound devastation. The weight of responsibility for their deaths must have hit him, compounded by the fact that he had directly caused the demise of a woman and 2 innocent children. Contemplating these events is enough to churn my stomach. I struggle to fathom how they both arrived at such profoundly monstrous decisions, and it genuinely altered my perspective on the world. Standing beside the man at the funeral, perceiving him as a loving, caring father now seems like a facade. He's currently on death row, filing appeal after appeal. The same person who harbored the capacity not only to end the lives of 2 innocent children and their pleading mother, but also to orchestrate the demise of his own family. This tale dates back to my best friend's teenage years, around the age of 15, in the mid-2000s. We reside in rural Alabama, right in the heart of the sticks. One Friday night, her dad developed a craving for a basket of Royal Reds. Eager to head out, they faced the challenge of finding a last-minute babysitter. Seizing the opportunity, my BFF asserted her independence, insisting she didn't need a babysitter and could be trusted to stay home alone for the night. Her parents conceded, but with a condition: she had to be in bed and asleep by the time they returned, which would be sometime after 11 p.m. Failure to comply would result in grounding. However, if she succeeded, her mom promised a shopping spree the next day, a tempting proposition indeed. The thought of being home alone coupled with a shopping spree makes my heart flutter. As the night unfolded, her parents embarked on their dinner date. They left her with some money for pizza, and she reveled in the time of her life. Watching whatever she pleased on TV, indulging in pizza and ice cream, she had the entire place to herself. All she needed to do was hit the hay by around 11:15, and a substantial addition to her wardrobe awaited her the next day. Time rolled around, and she successfully completed her mission. The kitchen was spotless, ice cream stowed away, pizza boxes disposed of, and she was comfortably clad in her PJs. Suddenly, she is jolted by the sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by the echo of footsteps down the hallway. Swiftly, she leaps into bed, extinguishes the lights, and lies down with her back turned to the bedroom door, feigning sleep. True to her expectations, her parents can be heard ascending the stairs, exchanging hushed shushes and giggles. It's evident that their indulgence in drinks might be a tad excessive, perhaps explaining their insistence on her being in bed before they returned, to spare them potential teasing for being inebriated. As she remains silent, the handle of her bedroom door starts to turn, indicating that they are checking to confirm her slumber. She remains perfectly still, not making a sound. The person, either her mom or dad, who opened the door, stealthily crosses the carpet toward her. Upon reaching her bedside, they bend over, gently stroking her hair, and plant a kiss on the side of her head, a clear giveaway of their inebriation, as the scent of alcohol lingers in the air. As the mysterious figure slips out of the room, silence envelopes the house once again. It appears her parents retired straight to bed to sleep off their margaritas, as she hears little more than the occasional stumble to and from the bathroom. Growing drowsy, she lays there, drifting into sleep, only to awaken the next morning, eagerly anticipating her promised shopping spree. She rolls over, checks her phone only to discover she has a bunch of texts from her mom, all timed for an hour or so after she'd fallen asleep. She opens them, half expecting a bunch of "You're an amazing daughter, I love you" drunk text, but in her half-asleep haze, what she reads makes no sense to her whatsoever. The message read something like, "Honey, I'm sorry if we worried you, but we saw Aunt Barb and her new boyfriend, and we totally lost track of time. We're staying in a motel tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow around 12. Promise, then we can go on that shopping trip." I can only imagine what that must have been like at the time, but my friend said the information was a square peg, and her brain was a round hole. It just wouldn't fit. Her parents had come all the way home, then gone back out again, but why? She texts her mom, like, "Did you come home last night?" And as she does, she said she felt her heart begin to pound in her chest, because if she said no, she was either lying, or it wasn't neither of her parents in the house the night before, it was a complete stranger. As soon as that horrible penny really dropped for her, she called her mom in a panic, who obviously then told her to call the cops ASAP. But when they got there, there was nothing to tell them how this stranger had gotten in, if anything was taken, or how they got out. My friend swears that she'd heard the front door close quietly, but if that was the case, how did the guy get a copy of the front door key? Even scarier is their security cameras didn't record anyone walking out their driveway, and there's literally no other way to get to the front of the property without being caught on it. It 100% wasn't some kind of dream either, because someone had evidently and very quietly gone through her mom's clothes at some point during the night. No one was ever caught over it. The cops didn't even have a suspect, and I don't believe my friend would just make something up like that. She was really actually upset about it for a really long time. And unless the whole thing is an elaborate cover story for something else, then it really did happen. It just freaks me out thinking the guy is still out there and that he's that good at being a freaking creep that he can do all that stuff and stay totally undetected. Just the thought of it makes my skin crawl. These events happened when I was around 6 or 7, around 2001. We lived in a small community close to Gordo, Alabama. From kindergarten through first grade, my mom worked crazy hours. So twice a week after school, my great-grandmother would pick up me, my sister, and 4 other cousins from school. We would head to my grandparents' home, where they had an awesome treehouse in their front yard, right next to a big sunflower field. My grandparents would make homemade baked sunflower seeds from it. One of the things we would do was search the yard for cold rocks and old arrowheads. Once we found them, we would pick who had the coolest find and leave them in the treehouse. My great-grandmother would call us into the house to get something to eat, and just like clockwork, up the old dirt road hidden by trees lived an old woman. She had to be in her 70s at least, and she lived completely alone. Now, we kids never had any interaction with her, but my grandfather would call her the witch woman. Apparently, they had a few minor altercations, and she wasn't fond of him nor his family. The woman was tall and lean with a hunched back, curly gray hair, and appeared much older than the 70s. She would always wear plain, dull dresses and walked with a cane and a limp. I'll never forget seeing her waddle up the road anytime she would go inside the house. After coming from inside the treehouse, we would take our food and watch through the screen door as the witch woman in question would begin her walk up the long dirt road. I remember seeing her pick up speed as she hobbled across the paved road to my grandparents' yard. Every time she had climbed the wooden steps nailed to the tree and entered our treehouse carrying a pillowcase. She would stay up there for only a few minutes, and then she'd start down again, carrying the pillowcase over her shoulder. She'd walk right back towards her home. However, every time before crossing the road, she would look back at our treehouse and scowl like she wanted to rip it to pieces with her bare hands. Once she would leave, we would go right back out there, and some, if not all, the treasures we found would be gone. She never came when we were outside, which makes me think she would watch us. My grandfather said that she was fairly harmless and honestly just thought she had a bad case of dementia with no family to look after her. I had many nightmares as a kid about the old witch woman. As adults, we look back and think how freaky it all was, but back then, we just made up stories about her to creep each other out. I still wonder to this day what she did with all of our treasures. Hey everyone, we are facing algorithm issues. Your like and comment are more important now, if you enjoy from stories. Thank you.